Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have everyone here tonight. My name is Victoria Christoph. I am the Visiting Associate Professor of Law, the Government Procurement Law Fellow here at the GW Law School, George Washington University Law School. Tonight's event is called Careers in Government Contracting, and we have a great panel lined up for you tonight. We have alumni of our Masters of Science in Government Contracting program, the MSGC program. And the purpose of tonight's event is we here at GW wanted to talk to you all about how to leverage an interdisciplinary degree in government contracting. And what I mean by that is it's a degree for non-attorneys who are seeking to obtain a master level education in the government contracting field and the skills that are accompanied by it. I had the MSGC program that is now the predecessor, and it's being phased out to the Masters of Study in Law program in government contracting called the MSL program. So you'll be hearing a lot about both degrees, and we'll be talking about the benefits of both degrees tonight. Few initial items before I introduce our panelists. I just wanted to tell you, we have some colleagues here from GW on the call with us. We have Dean Jessica Tillotman, who's the Dean of our Government Procurement Law program. We also have Melanie Orhant, who is from the Career Services group here at the law school, and she counsels our LLMs, MSLs, and young alumni from the program. We also tonight will have a chat function available, so if you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to put them in the chat function. We'll try our best to address the questions, and if we don't get to them, do not worry, because we have a networking session following tonight's discussion where we'll have breakout rooms and you can ask your questions to the panelists directly. So with that, I would like to introduce our great panel for tonight. First up, we have Darnice Wilkerson. Darnice is the Director of the Office of Acquisition at the National Institutes of Health. Ms. Wilkerson has more than 25 years of federal contracting and management experience, working for large and small private industry firms. She began her career with Booz Allen and Hamilton. Ms. Wilkerson then served as a Lockheed Martin contract management representative to the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, which supported all of NASA's space operations centers and satellite installations around the world. Ms. Wilkerson is a graduate of the MSGC program here from GW. We next have Mirka Mikhail. She is a supervisory contracting officer at the Digital Directorate's Program Executive Office of Foreign Military Sales Division of Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts. In this position, Ms. Mikhail serves as a business leader providing acquisition policy and contract strategy support. Ms. Mikhail has a decade of acquisition experience, and prior to her current position, Ms. Mikhail was a procurement analyst where she provided business and contract strategy advice to the Director of Contracting and Contract Clearance Approval Authority. She is a 2018 grad of our MSGC program here at GW. We also have with us Mr. Thomas Kennedy. He is the Director in KPMG's Federal Advisory Practice, managing and supports large service contracts for the federal government. Mr. Kennedy currently sits within KPMG's Technology Enablement Service line, focused on enabling the government with technology, innovation data services across their back, middle, and front office functions. Previously, Mr. Kennedy worked in KPMG's commercial advisory, aerospace, and defense practice, providing regulatory compliance services to the federal agencies and government contractors across the DoD and civilian agencies. He is a graduate of our MSGC program and graduated in 2016. And last but not least, we have Ms. Joelle Fosher, who is the Director of the Enterprise Acquisition and Sustainment Division at Washington Headquarters Services, the Acquisition Directorate, where she leads a team of acquisition professionals. Ms. Fosher has experience in procurement and IT contract review and negotiations. Her areas of specialty include evaluation of supplier proposals, purchasing, supply chain management, logistics and distribution, negotiation training, and international work experience. Ms. Fosher is a 2019 graduate of the MSGC program. And we're so excited to have them all today. And I'm letting some people into our program now. And with that, we'll go ahead and get the discussion rolling. For those who are joining us, welcome. We just ask you keep your microphones on mute and your cameras off for the moment. So I wanted to open the floor with a general background question that I would like to pose to all panelists. The question is, could you please provide us with an overview of your career, what you were doing before you came to GW, and what you're doing now, and why did you decide to pursue the MSGC program? We could start off with Ms. Darnese.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Victoria. And to the GW family, thank you. I was excited to get the invite and I responded as such. But what was I doing before the MSGC degree program? Well, on interest night, I actually came to GW looking at a different program. And I was met with a former colleague that he had actually been my NCMA president for so long. And he was the MSGC coordinator at the time, Mr. Neil Kuchar. And Neil has since moved on. But when I walked in and I saw him and I said, well, Neil, I'm here for a different program. Why would I be interested in a government contracts program? I've been in contracting more than 20 years. What could I gain from a degree like that? He said, well, he said, I tell you what, why don't we get creative? Think about the MBA program with a concentration in the government contracting and give it some thought. And I said, okay. And he explained the program being hybrid between the business program, business school and the law school. And it seemed like a great married partnership. So I started down the path that he asked me to. So I originally started at GW as an MBA student with a concentration in government contracting, and later considered all of the other married partnerships, the MBA JD, which I quickly dismissed that I didn't need a JD at this point in my career. However, the MSGC degree kept circling around. Eventually, I joined that program, and so I actually finished in GW with an MBA and MSGC in May 2020, virtually. But as you heard, I have been in contracting a long time. So actually in 2022, I will celebrate 30 years in government contracting, having worked for private industry firms, thank you, small and large businesses, and several, almost a half dozen federal agencies at this point. But I still felt unfulfilled, even being at GW in class, in a position where I was not a supervisor at the time. I served as an advisor to the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Administration. I was the procurement advisor to the Deputy Assistant Secretary staff at HHS, Health and Human Resources, Health and Human Services. And I still felt unfulfilled in that position. Having gone through classes, meeting the variety of guest speakers and other students, I realized that my calling, my passion was to give back and rejoin the leadership ranks. And so in July 2019, I assumed the position where I am now currently at NIH as a director for the Office of Acquisitions, aligned to the Office of the Director at NIH. And I could not be more thrilled to be able to contribute what I have gained through this program.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. So I will pass the mic over to Joelle.
Well, thank you for being, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's great to see some familiar names in the attendees. So I would say that I didn't follow a typical path to get here. And I actually came from industry. So I had a career in industry, and I decided, probably for personal and perhaps altruistic reasons, that I wanted to work for the government. And so I had to move from working for a Fortune 500 company and moving into government. And so I had a great opportunity to get into acquisitions. And the common thread from the private sector was that I was in procurement. And so I was able to move in, but of course I had to relearn everything about federal procurement. I mean, there are rules and regulations. It's very complicated compared to the private sector. So why did I choose the program? Well, I entered the Department of Defense, and just as a reminder, I'm here in my personal capacity as a graduate of the MSGC program. I'm not representing my agency, but I entered DoD, and I had to immediately start to learn the DWIA certification. For DoD acquisition professionals, you need to do DWIA level 1, 2, and 3. It's basically required. And so throughout my training, I encountered, I guess, excerpts from books from Savinik and Nash, articles by Steve Schooner, papers from Daniel Gordon. And so I said, you know, I got into the industry events, attended World Congress, did different things, grew, and then I started, you know, to learn about GW. And of course, as Darnese said, I met Neil Couture, and he was a great guy. I met him in Boston at World Congress, and we made a connection, and he started talking to me about the program. And of course, when I saw who were the instructors in the program, I said, I must do this, because I basically felt that I had done an adequate training in DoD, but I had this need to learn more. And I just wanted to be fully prepared for any procurement that I was working on. I wanted to be extremely well read. I didn't want to just have the quick summary. I really wanted to be able to have the full analysis and understand what I was doing. So that's why I took on the program. And then, as Victoria stated, today I lead a group of professionals, but I really started as a contract specialist. And, you know, every year or two I was promoted, and I really benefited from the program because it was able to fulfill that need to learn more and to really have the credentials and the competencies to do my job effectively.
Wonderful. We like to hear that. Well, great. Well, I will just the next person I see up is Tom. So Tom, same question.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for trying to at least listen to what I have to say. I selected GW. When I started at KPMG on staff, I was in a commercial consulting practice, and my clients were Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, BAE, the large defense contractors. And we primarily supported them with procurement and acquisition type services. Do they have adequate accounting and procurement systems? We did audits for them to make sure their systems are in fact adequate. As well as Department of Energy was my largest client at the time, and we were effectively DCAA for them, performing all of their audits for them. So it required us to be somewhat extremely proficient in FAR Part 14, FAR Part 15, FAR Part 16, FAR Part 30, FAR Part 31, etc. So a lot of what I learned on the job was practical experience, but as I climbed the corporate ladder within our firm, and I started having conversations with senior leaders at our current clients, as well as within the government. When I was talking to folks as accomplished as Darnese and Joelle and Mirka, they generally don't listen to consultants, but they more likely to listen to consultants when I both have actual experience as well as academic training. So GW offered both that. It validated my actual experience with academic training and say, yo, what I was learning when I'm self-teaching myself practically is in fact correct. And it gave me that extra level of polish so that when I did talk to Joelle and Darnese, I wasn't putting my foot in my mouth. I was saying the right information, I was dealing with the right regulations, giving them the right guidance as a consultant to be their trusted advisor. They knew that I was acting in their best interest. So that led me to GW, and the fact that this was with the law program, being the proximity with lawyers and how lawyers view the world, the Schooners, the Gordons, et cetera, as well as the students, lawyers just view the world differently. They assess risk differently than those who are generally on operations. So the ability to be in my proximity, to be close with other intelligent individuals, trying to learn the same way who were different than me, was an invaluable experience. I'm just not going to get somewhere else through a typical MBA program. So that a hybrid of both the regulatory compliance, the federal acquisition side, as well as work with folks who are different than me, was invaluable. It allowed me to then transition from our consulting commercial practice to our federal practice. And now I lead a very large service network, primarily technology services, but my conversations are regularly with folks. Again, I repeated myself like Darnese, like Janelle, like Mirka, trying to give them the right guidance that acts in their best interest, as well as us, so we can give them the service they want. It's the extra level of credibility that I now have they may not listen to consultants, but they're more likely to listen to me, given my academic training is similar to theirs.
Great, thank you, Tom. Last but not least, Mirka. Same question.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks again for being here and for the opportunity. So prior to GW, I was a contract specialist for MIT Lincoln Labs. It's a federally funded research and development center up in Massachusetts. And while I was there, I met this, one of my team leads was friend with Schooner. And I was thinking of like, oh, I want to pursue a higher degree. But not only that, I want to be a well-rounded contracts professional. I want to better understand the FAR. I want to better apply those policies and procedures to my contracts and while I'm negotiating. And he suggested GW, and I was like, okay, let me look into it. And to my surprise, it was exactly what I was looking for. I started the program in 2018. I did finish the program that is a combination with law school and the business school. I would say that the best thing for me there was that I was able to network with people, like-minded people. I was able to learn from other peers that were within the career field. And also, I was able to look at the FAR differently as a set of tools instead of rules to kind of like implement that in my negotiations. So to me, I think that's one of the things that post graduation took me to the next level. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue the MSc. At that time, it was the MSGC, but now the Master's in Law and Procurement, Government Procurement. Because I wanted to see what could I do to become a better contracts professional? How can I go to the next level? And how can I also share this expertise with others? And I think this program provided me with that. It gave me the confidence to speak the lingo, to understand the different policies and procedures that we have to navigate while we're negotiating contracts. In a poster program, I held different positions. Right now, I'm leading a team of contract specialists through like international foreign military sales and international contracts, and I love it. And I think the government procurement program here at GW really set me up for success within a short period of time, and sort of put me at the same level as people that has like probably like 20 or 30 more years of experience than me in terms of like understanding and applying policies and procedures within the best interest of the government. So I'll keep it short. I know we have a lot of other questions, so over to you.
Great, thank you. And it's so interesting to hear your all's experience. Everyone has a different story, how they got to GW, and everyone comes from a different place in their career. But it sounds like for all of you, there was some change after the program, whether it was within a different department or a promotion. So it led to movement, which is great to see. So shifting gears a little bit. So given that you've been through this program, what advice would you give to an individual who's in the program right now? Is there any particular classes you would recommend or opportunities they should seek out to complement their degree program? So I'll start off with someone different. I'll start off with Tom.
Yeah, the advice I would give to the current students is network. There are people you would meet. We were talking before we started, Joelle had mentioned that just being around some of these individual groups, that experience, what we learned is invaluable, and I would agree with her. There are folks I still talk to this day that I've called to, I've got this question about this. What are my remediation policies because something bad happened? Or what is a strategy we can employ to support our client? And they have different experiences. So the first advice I would say is network. meet your students, because they all bring something different to the table. We have since hired some of my former colleagues, my classmates as well, because they bring something to the table for us. The majority of my time now is just strategizing to grow our business and how we can support our clients. And there are folks in this program that know a lot more than I do. They can help me strategize. They can give us guidance. They can help my clients provide something I just don't have an expertise with, so network. The second thing is find something that interests you. If it is anti-corruption, if it is technology, if it is in fact protest, find that thing and just dig into it. Because it's very rare you're gonna have the opportunity to have these professors, these students, these colleagues who are so giddy with this work as you are. Find something and just dig into it, because it's rare, at least for myself, it's rare that I had time in my career, the previous 25 years, that I was able to focus on teaching myself and having other people focus on me. So try not to squander that. It goes by faster than you think. I miss it tremendously. So just capitalize on the ability to focus on yourself is my guidance.
Great, great. Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of the program is we offer students certain level of electives where they could really take that flexibility and focus on what they really are passionate about. How about Darnice? Do you agree with that, or would you offer some different advice?
No, I like what Tom said. The network is so very key. I think even after leaving, there are text messages that I will send out at the oddest times, even of the evening, and I'm surprised often when I get a response back. And I'm talking professor level, some of the guest speakers that we've had. I think what I love the most is the real life and the real time guest speakers that would come into the class week by week to just offer some candid experiences, candid feedback on the topic that we were discussing the very night of class. But Tom also mentioned, some of the special and unique electives and programs that are tied to the program. One of the most interesting, events that was tied to the program was not a class night, but we watched, I think it was War Dogs, the book and movie. That is all about procurement. Mirka, you're smiling. I think you maybe have been there, but it was a movie, and it was a silver screen movie about procurement, federal procurement. But it started as a book, and the author actually came the night that the movie was shown, and students were invited to come. We had popcorn. It was great. But it was really a deep dive into a lot of the subject matter that we were studying, writing about, reading about, but it brought it to a real life, real world example for everyone. And then even learning about the author's background. But I just think it's an invaluable experience to be at GW in this program. And what I would offer as advice is be a sponge, absorb all that you can, meet everyone that you can, have a conversation. Like Tom, if you were in the class, I would want to circle back with you. I would want to talk with you because it's enlightening to hear other perspectives, other reads on the same material that you're reading. The same regulation can be interpreted 15 different ways. And so from a contractor perspective, an attorney being in the room, a practitioner in terms of a contract specialist or an 1102, all of those reads are going to be different. The beauty is that we're all in the classroom together. So build your network, absolutely.
Great. Related to that question, I'm going to pose this question to Joelle. What type of advice would you give to a recent graduate of the program who's trying to advance their career?
So, for a recent graduate, if they're already employed working with an agency, I would certainly use the information that hopefully throughout the training, the coursework, you've kept your supervisor informed of what you've been doing, and how all the courses are wonderful and how you can apply it to your work. And hopefully you have that kind of interaction. But I would say try to find a way to use your education or the skills that you've learned or the research techniques that you've learned at GW and try to solve a problem for your agency. And the reason I say that is because you're giving back to your agency and you're showing how what you've learned at GW can actually benefit the agency. And it may not be a procurement, but it may be a solution. It could look at internal corruption, for example, or something very specific, or model, or how our procurement system is leading the way for other countries, and what are some of the benefits that we have, what are things that we still need to improve upon. So I would try to find a way where you can apply it to a problem in your agency. It could be something as simple as a review process, a peer review process, something very simple that can really benefit where you are. And that to me shows that you're giving back and wanting to improve and benefit everyone. I would just like to add to the conversation, if that would be all right, Victoria.
Sure. Sure.
One course that really I think is extremely beneficial at GW is the intellectual property course with Richard Gray. In that course, I think we were maybe, most of them were attorneys actually in the LLM program. And I think there were maybe a handful of us who were non-attorneys. But it was great because we split up into groups and we actually had to conduct a negotiation for intellectual property data rights. And the regulations were very complex, but it's by having that real life type of simulation that you're actually able, I think, to make the connection in your head and understand the intricacies of when you're negotiating data rights and how you can negotiate as well. So I thought that was an amazing course. I wish there were more of them. The other highlight that I would like to share with everyone is don't be afraid to speak up. It can be very intimidating when you're with a bunch of very smart people like attorneys, but by learning how to speak up and contribute based on your practical experience, you actually can help the attorneys in the course because they're not doing the contract specialist work, but you can also learn from the attorneys and how rigorous their analysis is and how you have to defend a position and be succinct and be able to look at all the different facets of it. So I really appreciated being in those seminar courses. I actually took 4 with Professor Eukins, partially because it worked with my schedule. And I recall initially I struggled. What does he want? What does he expect of me? But throughout my experience, I learned so much from him and the experts that he brought in. I mean, worldwide experts. And it was a very stimulating class. I learned how to really analyze, have very strong critical thinking, and how to also present that information in a way that I could actually help my attorney classmates and how my attorney classmates could help me. So that's what I would add to the conversation.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you picked up on that. That's one of the great synergies that we can offer here at GWs, because our JD and LLM attorneys are side by side with MSLs, and there's lots that both groups can offer to each other, as Joelle said. Darnese, I noticed your hand was up. Do you have a comment or would like to jump in on this?
I did. I just wanted to tag along on Joelle's comment about the attorneys in the room and the fact that I think I was that student, the first class with Eukins, where we were discussing the reduction in price clause for GSA, and I got partnered with one of the attorneys. And so I joined the group thinking, well, I'm here to assist the attorney, but it turned out completely different. And I'm so glad I opened myself to, just as Joelle said, because the attorney actually needed my help in understanding how to now bring that regulation and that law into a practicable and operational understanding and execution. So you're absolutely right, Joelle. I just wanted to add that comment, sorry.
No, please, thank you. Mirka, I wanted to make sure I give you a chance. Do you have anything to add to both of these questions? Advice to recent grads or advice to current students in the program?
I think Tom, Joel, and Bernice have given great feedback. I did want to add, because I work in government, I decided to do sort of like a certificate in project management. I think that's great because part of like contracting, oh, sorry, my light went off. So while you're working in government contracts, you're basically part of an integrated product team, and you're part of a program, at least in the Air Force. That's kind of like how we operate. So I thought taking a project management certificate in classes will add a lot of value to me, for me to understand the bigger picture and to think up at a more strategic level. They do have some like math class and like sort of like, the people don't like numbers, but don't be scared of them. They were really valuable, and the professors in the decision science department are really, really great as well. So those are maybe some electives that I'm not sure if they can still take within the new program, but I definitely enjoyed that. And then the second thing I want to touch back on is what Joelle was saying on how to give back to your work, right? So I think like one of the best advice that I received was like, well, now you finish the program, like how do you use what you learn within your work to develop like strategies for negotiating, like to understand the different remedies and like risk associated with the contracts that you're establishing with different contractors. So I think Jill really it's spot on her advice of giving back to your agency and trying to solve a problem. Over to you, Victoria.
Great, thank you, thank you. And I'm just gonna step in and clarify. We've heard a couple of people's names pop up, and so for those of who are on this call who aren't current students, Professor Chris Eukins is our the GW Government Procurement Law program is made up of full-time faculty, permanent faculty, and an army of wonderful adjunct professors who are specialists and leaders in their field. Our full-time faculty includes Dean Jessica Tillman, who's our anti-corruption and compliance specialist. Professor Steve Schooner, his specialty is sustainability in the government procurement system. Professor Chris Eukins, who has an international focus as well as a state and local government procurement focus, and Professor Joshua Schwartz, who also his specialty is administrative law and the intersection of that and government procurement. But all of them have a deep knowledge of the general procurement rules and regulations. And as Joel mentioned, one of our adjuncts for the IP course, the leader in his field, we have 20 more of those types of teachers who bring their specialty into the program. So with that, I wanted to shift gears a little bit to for students who are graduating and who are going to be entering into the interview process and the hiring process. These degrees, the MSGC degree and the MSL degree, may not be that definitely will be known by those in the government procurement field, but at times they may run into employers who aren't familiar with this degree. So what advice would you give to a student?
I found out supposedly Barry is
sorry. Okay. Who shows up to an interview and the employer is not familiar with this degree. How do they handle that situation? So I'll start off with Joelle this time.
Sorry, I had to mute myself for a second. So I think that if they're not familiar with the degree or the program, I would just try to frame it as I've studied with the renowned experts in government procurement. And we know, Professor Schooner, Christopher Eukins, Dean Tillman, who's an expert as well. I mean, you may not remember the names in the moment of the interview, but at least, say that you've studied with the experts, because I think that means a great deal, and maybe speak a little bit about the program. However, in any interview, they're also looking at your work experience. So it has to be balanced, right? It can't just be about your degree because they're looking for work experience. Therefore, I think it's important to show what you have, and they'll see it as part of your resume. I don't know if I would make it that much more prominent than your work experience, but I would certainly address it as much as you can. And for example, if they have any general questions, about why you would be a good candidate, you could talk about, work experience and maybe my education, and highlight that fact about your education, where you studied, where you with the premium experts in government contracting.
Great, thank you. And Tom, I know we've talked about this before. What would you say?
Yeah, the way I have described it has changed based upon the audience that I am speaking to, namely my partners. I have partners on our commercial practice and our federal practice that I work for, as well as, I'm now hiring, I'm hire lawyers on my team and PhD statisticians and developers and supply chain experts, et cetera. If they were describing this to me, I would say either shift towards your understanding of federal procurement and more so operationally. How do you actually execute a contract with the acquisition process, et cetera? Or I would shift towards more the law side of the degree. How do I assess risk? How do I assess being in compliance with specific regulations? FAR Part 30, the cost accounting standard in particular is one thing that is a big deal. So what is your academic understanding there? And how does GW from the law degree describe it? Historically, as the MSGC program, it is the hybrid business and law school, but I would describe it as such that depending upon my audience, I would shift one way or another. I would also, my opinion is if you're coming to the commercial side, which, with Joelle, Mirka, and Darnice being on the as government employees, they're going to have different perspectives than myself. I would like to know that I'm looking at how do you think? How has this program improved your ability to assess the situation, to strategize, to analyze risk? And then how has this program elevated those abilities for you? Are you applying to a strategic role for us as a management consultant? Are you applying to process improvement role as a acquisition specialist? So what does this give you to be able to view that problem set and bring additional value to the problem set? I love, Joelle, that you said, really find a problem and solve that problem. As consultants, that's what we get paid to do. The government pays us to find problems and solve those problems. And I don't know how to solve all those problems, and no one does, but are you smart enough and can you work within the team to help us solve those really complex problems? So I'm looking at how does this program improve your ability to assess, to view, to analyze risk? What additional tools has this program brought to you so that you are in fact a better professional? But that's my view. I'm looking at purely how do you view the world and how do you think, and are you trainable and have you trained yourself? And one of those, if all of us, we've picked the MSGC program, this law program for specific reasons, because we actively look for something to self-improve ourselves. And I think a lot of people are here who are on this call are as well. I just want to know that story and that you are in fact actively trying to improve yourself and how you've been successful. So that's how I would leverage this degree. It is quite unique. I would also leverage the uniqueness of this degree. I will say again, as consultants, we are submitting proposals to the government left and right. And I regularly say that I have this degree from George Washington Law School that no one else has. There's not a lot of people have that. And the people that do are experts. So generally, I have a lot of clients that that's really interesting. You have this different level of expertise. Yes, I do. And I have this network that comes with it. Like, Joel and I have crossed over clients. If I had to pick up a phone call, and it's been a while, and say, I got this question, you're going to help me because we're part of that network, and vice versa. If she has a question for me, I will help her. So I would maximize that value as well. You pay for this, take advantage of it.
Great. How about Darnice? Would you add anything to that?
I would. I think, Tom, there is certainly analytical skill set that has conveyed and that's applicable even in government. And so that was one of the things that came to mind for me when you asked this question about a recent graduate and how to advance your career. That's the thing you want to, and being able to articulate that to a hiring manager. That's what you want to articulate is because of this program, I am now different. I have a new perspective. Explaining the uniqueness, as Tom mentioned, my business acumen has been elevated. I'm able to see things from a few different sides of a perspective. And it's largely due to the real world nature of how the courses are taught, the guest speakers that are invited in on a weekly basis, Again, some of the unique partner programs that happen outside of the classroom. One, I guess one of the most interesting classes, and it doesn't sound like it as I say it, but contract formations. Again, I told you that I'll have 30 years of experience come 2022, but contract formations was taught in such a unique way. I left enlightened. And one thing is that it was taught by one of the judges that I had encountered in my professional career years prior. I had encountered this judge through a claim that had ended up going to the Federal Board of Claims, and the court, one of the case studies that was used for the class itself, the presiding judge came in as a guest speaker. Being able to convey that type of value to a hiring manager, you just don't get that anywhere. This program is unique, and being able to, in a very compelling way, explain that to a hiring manager, I don't think you're going to walk out without the job. That's just me.
Great, great. America, anything to add?
One thing would be also to piggyback on what Tom and Joel and Bernice have said is another thing that you could do is pick a class like Bernice was saying, like for me, like contract administration. So you can, when you're interviewing, you can describe what you have learned in that class, right? Like, hey, if you know enough about the position that you're applying to, you can sort of like cross-reference, like, okay, I'm applying for this contract specialist position that requires dealing with complex negotiations or complex contract administration things. So you can say, well, you know what, I went to GW and I had a class with Professor Schooner or whoever the professor is at the time that was specific on how to administer contracts and how, and I learned about the different remedy granting clauses that we can provide and include in the contract. So I think just relaying that message, like the three of our expert panelists have said, I think it's wonderful. So over to you, Victoria.
Great, thank you. I'll just pose one more question before we go to our breakout rooms. Are there any trends in the market that you're seeing in terms of popular or in-demand subspecialties in the government procurement area? And if so, what is your take on that? And I'll start with America this time. We've been leaving you to the end, so I wanted to start with you.
And that is fine. So in terms of industry trends, at least, and again, I'm here in my own personal capacity, not the agency's opinion, but what I would say, we are moving or shifting towards a more business approach when we are looking at contracts. So now we're thinking, instead of negotiating, just looking at the FAR, we are asking our employees to be knowledgeable of like the financial statements. So knowing how to read a 10K, knowing how the corporate world works, we're basically shifting away from staying within our federal procurement kind of shell and venturing out and see, okay, this is how the corporate and industry world works. And basically we're challenging our folks to better understand that, and apply that knowledge in their negotiations in a more strategic way, rather than just focusing only on that one action. Okay, instead what we're doing is we're negotiating this contract, but what other contracts are coming up ahead with this contract, with this contractor? How can we leverage that in this current negotiation? So I see a trend, at least in the Air Force, and moving in that direction. So over to you.
Great. Yeah, that's very useful information. Next person I see up is Tom. How about you? Any?
I actually, Mirka, I want to actually give you the counter to that trends, because the way you're thinking, and how can you add, what's the business acumen, what's the downstream impacts, operational impacts, not just with the agency, but with the business. We think about that constantly. Every little decision in how we try to work with our clients, one, our philosophy is client first, then the company. So we have to act in the best interest of our clients for the government, Air Force. But if we have a perspective that we want to shift to use one vehicle or another contract vehicle, or if we want to try to shift something to go small versus large, use an IDIQ versus a BPA, use SOUP versus I think Air Force has the SDS contract. All those little micro decisions, we try to strategize to the best of our ability, one for the agency and two for us. So it's really interesting to say that is your trend, because that's how we think literally daily. And to be able to have those discussions and make intelligent decisions, we have to understand what are the impacts of having an IDIQ contract versus a BPA versus an MSA or a GWAC or et cetera, you know, and how does it help us and how does it help the client? So that I'm so excited you have the trend, but we think that way too. I would request, as I've always said, have conversations with industry, and just we want to have a conversation with the government, because that's the only way we can both be successful. Let's just have open communications and work it out together. So I get a little excited there, Mirka. I'm really happy you said that, because that's how we think as well.
No, that's great, Tom. Thanks for that feedback. And I would agree also with you in the sense of we are also moving towards, and I'm sorry, Victoria, if I'm jumping in. We're also moving into basically thinking about using existing vehicles. So going away from like, let's create our own contract. We're buying the same of this product. Who else is buying it out there? Let's tag up along on GSA, or can we use NASASUB? Or establish our own IDIQ if necessary, rather than continuing to just go ahead and do contract after contract. So I think we're definitely moving in, and I think it's a positive change. So over to you, Victoria.
Great.
I'll finish up on that trend. Moving like to what are the vehicles, trying to harmonize a lot of contracts. The same thing with us. Our philosophy is we need to have a robust portfolio of contracts, but at the same time, it's an administrative nightmare. So how would we rather use an IDIQ that's agency specific or not? Trends we've seen, I guess it's more specific, and I'll put this out there, moving away from LPTA and best value. LPTA is just not always the best scenario. So we are seeing, at least my portfolio of clients, is trying to push them away from LPTA, because generally they do that to save money and it bites them in the butt. But we're getting to a broader philosophical contracting discussion here. So my clients are technology-wise moving away from that, from LPTA to best value. And then just technology in general, automating things, using systems, doing more with less. There's less people, more technology. That is a massive trend we see in the acquisition world. Category management, to your point, are you buying something somewhere at one price and somewhere else for a different price? Let's fix this and buy the same thing on one vehicle for a single price. So that's not a new trend. It's just a continuing trend to try to act in the best interest of the government. So, and now I'm done. Victoria, back to you.
No, thank you. It's great to see the difference. Not that there's too much difference. Sounds like you guys are on the same track between, government and industry, that having a business perspective is very important. How about you, Joelle? Any trends you're seeing within your agency, or even broader than that?
I'll keep it broader, but I think that it's relevant for many, many agencies. So one trend I think that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years an increase of is other transaction authority. Mm-hmm. It's not new, dates back to NASA. They used it first, and may have been even used prior to that, 1950s, 60s. But anyway, other transaction authority. And I think it's a trend. It's a tool available, right? It's not the answer for every acquisition, but it's a tool available. But it also brings to light the need to have regulations, because if it's a non-FAR-based contract, you still have to follow certain procedures. You want competition, right? You want to do all those good things for industry that you can. So other transaction authority is one thing that we're also seeing, maybe more in the defense agency, is the grants regulations. Maybe less so in the non-DoD agencies, but definitely the grants regulations that could end up leading to a little more scrutiny and ensuring that things are being reported accurately. Cybersecurity, just look at the news, right? That's another trend, very important, a link to automation, but cybersecurity has different implications as well. And for DoD, one more, I think, important trend is there's a potential move to a new competency model. That information is out there. So it's not new, but DeWheel level 1, 2, and 3 will be moving to more of a competency type model, but that's still in the works, but it's supposed to come at some point. And of course, remote work. I mean, the pandemic made us all work, telework, but we're learning that people can do their jobs at home. You don't need to have the same footprint. And so that also changes how we do work and how we hold people accountable and ensuring we have the proper tools so that people can do their jobs. So those are the trends I would share.
Great, thank you. And I'll just put a plug for our program. So we are launching the newest course to our program, which is a course on OTs, and that'll be launching this summer, and it'll be online, and we're really excited about that. We also offer a course on grants law and our MSL degree. We have the MSL degree in government procurement, but we've also now offer a second one where students can specialize in government procurement and cybersecurity. So you could get a subspecialty. So we are trying to track these trends and offer our students opportunities to prepare for that. Last but not least, Darnice, would you like to add anything? Are you seeing something different?
Not seeing anything different. I think I would only add to what the panelists have mentioned so far. In the area of automation, especially with COVID, here at NIH, and Joelle, the OTAs absolutely are applicable at HHS, as well as the grants, the increase on the grants, regulatory oversight and such. But the use of robotic process automation, RPAs, we're seeing now the applicability in acquisitions. How do we do things faster? With COVID, there were contracts we were writing almost in our sleep, and just in order to continue to support the mission. And so having those automation tools available to us, up and ready and running, being able to do more with less, as Tom mentioned, is certainly more of a tangible now than ever. And then, of course, the cybersecurity, there are other new requirements, probably more further along in DoD for contractors. The implication shows up for contractors, but even on the administration side, for contracting professionals, there's an assurance that, we're seeing what we need to see in government contract proposals as well. And that we're ensuring that, the cybersecurity is in place, intact. But more than anything, business and technology savvy is more of an upward trend, I think, is here to stay. It will only intensify.
Great, thank you for that. And Dean Tillman just put the link into the chat. We last month we had a 3-part webinar series on intelligent automation and AI, and we discussed the government perspective, the industry perspective, and kind of the future, what that looks like for both parties. So the recording's free and available for anyone who would like to watch it. It was a great program. We had over 450 registrants. So these are all great trends to hear about. And with that, we'll go ahead and go into our breakout rooms.